Modern war films promise spectacle. They promise heroes who never break and victories that feel inevitable. But these forgotten British films tell a different story. One where fear is constant and survival is uncertain. One where courage is quiet and often unseen. Tonight you are stepping into 12 stories that strip war down to its truth. And once you see it this way, modern Hollywood will never feel the same again. Number 12. The Way Ahead, 1944. There is no instant heroism here. No dramatic music telling you when to feel brave. What begins instead is something far more uncomfortable. A group of ordinary men, shopkeepers, clerks, men who never expected to hold a rifle. They arrive uncertain. Some are defiant, others are quietly terrified. And slowly the illusion of individuality begins to dissolve. The film tracks transformation with ruthless honesty. Training is not inspiring, it is repetitive, exhausting, dehumanizing by design. Discipline replaces personality. Orders replace thought. And by the time these men reach the battlefield, something has shifted in a way modern films rarely dare to show. They are no longer individuals chasing glory. They are fragments of a machine trying to survive long enough to function. Combat arrives without spectacle. No slow motion, no heroic speeches, just confusion, noise, dust, and the creeping realization that survival depends less on courage and more on obedience and luck. This is where the film quietly destroys modern Hollywood. It refuses to celebrate war. It presents it as a system that consumes identity and leaves behind something colder. And just as you begin to settle into that discomfort, the next story strips away even more. Number 11. 9 Men, 1943. There is something suffocating about isolation. Not the kind created by silence, but the kind created by being hunted. 9 soldiers. One ruined building in the desert. Endless sand stretching in every direction. And somewhere out there, an enemy waiting for weakness. This film does not rely on scale. It shrinks the battlefield down to something intimate and terrifying. Every decision carries weight. Every movement risks exposure. There are no reinforcements rushing in, no last-minute rescues, only time, and the slow erosion of hope as supplies run low and exhaustion begins to fracture the mind. What makes this story devastating is its refusal to exaggerate courage. Fear is constant. Now, you see it in the way men hesitate, in the way they look at each other without speaking. Leadership becomes less about authority and more about holding people together long enough to delay collapse. The enemy is rarely seen clearly, and that absence makes them more dangerous, more unpredictable. The desert itself becomes part of the threat. Heat presses down. Silence stretches. Every second feels longer than it should. Modern war films often chase spectacle. This one understands something far more disturbing. War is often waiting to be attacked, waiting to run out of options, waiting for the moment when survival becomes impossible. And just when you think war cannot feel more claustrophobic, the next film takes you somewhere even tighter. Number 10. We Dive at Dawn, 1943. Steel surrounds them. Oh, not as protection, as a trap. A submarine is not freedom beneath the sea. It is confinement measured in inches. Every wall is close. Every sound carries. Every mistake echoes. Inside this vessel, the war feels different. There is no horizon, no sky, only gauges, orders, and the constant awareness that above them, the ocean hides enemies who cannot be seen but can strike at any moment. The mission is simple on paper: navigate, engage, return. But nothing underwater is ever simple. What unfolds is not action in the traditional sense. It is procedure, discipline, silence. The crew moves with precision because hesitation is death. Torpedoes are not fired in bursts of excitement. They are calculated, measured, delayed until the exact moment when probability favors survival. Even then, nothing is guaranteed. The tension builds not from explosions, but from anticipation. Will they be detected? Will depth charges come raining down? Will the hull hold? You feel the pressure in every scene. The weight of water above them becomes almost physical. And when danger finally arrives, it is chaotic and disorienting rather than heroic. Modern films often romanticize submarine warfare. This one strips it down to its essence. It is not about glory. It is about enduring fear in a place where escape is impossible, where bravery is quiet, and where survival depends on trust in the man standing inches away. And then the war moves from beneath the sea to behind barbed wire, where patience becomes the only weapon left. Number 9, The Wooden Horse, 1950. Imagine fighting a war without a weapon. No gun, no battlefield, only time. Oh, endless time inside a prison camp, where every movement is watched and every hope is slowly worn down. This is not a story about sudden escape. It is a story about preparation, about men who refuse to surrender their minds even when their bodies are confined. The wooden horse itself is not just a prop, it is a symbol of deception, of intelligence being used as resistance. What makes this film so powerful is its focus on detail, the digging, the planning, the silent coordination between prisoners who cannot afford a single mistake. Every handful of dirt removed feels like progress. Every close call feels like collapse waiting to happen. There is no dramatic music to signal tension. The tension is built into the act itself. The guards are not caricatures. They are present, observant. And that presence forces the prisoners to think several steps ahead at all times. This is psychological warfare played out in small gestures and quiet risks. You begin to understand that survival is not just about escaping physically. It is about maintaining control over thought. Modern escape films often rely on speed and spectacle. This one relies on patience, on discipline, on the slow accumulation of effort that might never pay off. And when the moment finally comes, it does not feel triumphant. It feels fragile, as if everything could still fall apart. And from one prison camp, the story shifts to another, where escape is no longer just a plan, but an obsession that refuses to die. Number 8, The Colditz Story, 1955. There is a place where escape is not expected. It is engineered to be impossible. High walls. It's constant surveillance. Prisoners who have already proven they will not stop trying. Colditz is not just a prison. It is a challenge designed to break persistence. What makes this film remarkable is its restraint. It does not exaggerate the prisoners into unstoppable heroes. It shows them as thinkers, observers, men who study patterns, who learn routines, who exploit the smallest inconsistencies. Escape is not driven by impulse. It is built through analysis. Each attempt carries tension not because of action, but because of uncertainty. Will the timing hold? Will someone hesitate? Will the guards notice something out of place? Failure is not dramatic. It is quiet. A plan collapses. A man is caught. And everything resets. Again and again. The psychological weight becomes heavier with every attempt. Hope is no longer a burst of energy. It is something fragile that must be protected. Some prisoners begin to question whether escape is even worth the cost. Others cling to it because without it, there is nothing left to hold on to. Modern films often present escape as inevitable. This film presents it as improbable, as something that requires not just courage, but endurance of repeated failure. And that is where it quietly dismantles the idea of easy heroism. From stone walls and guarded towers, the war now shifts to something even more precise. A mission where every movement must be exact or nothing returns. Number 7, Above Us, The Waves, 1955. Precision replaces instinct. There is no room for improvisation here. The mission is defined down to seconds and inches. A massive enemy battleship sits protected by geography and defense. And the only way to reach it is through machines so small they feel almost fragile. These are midget submarines, cramped, vulnerable, designed for a single purpose. Get close, place the charge, escape if possible. The scale of the operation is striking, not because it is large, but because it is so limited. Every man inside these vessels understands the margin for error is almost non-existent. The film builds tension through preparation. Briefings are detailed. Risks are outlined without exaggeration. There is no illusion of safety, and when the mission begins, everything unfolds with mechanical focus. Navigation becomes a test of nerve. Obstacles appear without warning. Time begins to compress. What separates this from modern portrayals is its honesty about uncertainty. Success is never guaranteed. Equipment can fail, conditions can shift, and even perfect execution might not be enough. You watch as the men continue anyway, not because they believe they will survive, but because the mission demands it. The explosion itself is not treated as spectacle, it is treated as consequence, the result of careful planning and extreme risk. And the aftermath is not celebration, it is reflection. Who made it back? Who did not? What was achieved at what cost? And just when precision feels like control, the next story reminds you how quickly war strips that illusion away. Number 6. Malta Story, 1953. It begins not with action, but with exhaustion. An island under siege, supplies running thin, aircraft worn down, pilots push beyond limits that were never meant to be tested for this long. Malta is not just a location, it is a pressure point in the war. And everyone stationed there feels it every second. The film does not rush into combat. It lingers on routine, briefings, maintenance, waiting for orders that always seem to come too soon. The pilots are not portrayed as fearless. They are tired, focused, aware that every mission could be the one that ends everything, and still they go up, because the alternative is unthinkable. What makes this story powerful is how it treats survival as a temporary state. Every successful landing is not victory. It is a pause. The enemy returns, the sky fills again, and the cycle repeats. There is no clean narrative of progress, only endurance, only the ability to keep functioning under constant threat. The civilians are not background figures. They are part of the same struggle. Bombings do not discriminate. The line between military and civilian life disappears. Everyone shares the same fear, the same uncertainty about what tomorrow will bring, and that shared vulnerability adds weight to every decision made in the air. Modern war films often isolate heroism within individuals. This film spreads it across an entire community. It shows that survival is collective, that resilience is built through repetition and sacrifice rather than dramatic moments. And when losses come, they are not framed as noble. They are simply devastating. By the time the story settles into its rhythm, you realize something unsettling. There is no turning point, no moment where everything changes. Just people holding on longer than seems possible. And then the war narrows again, from an entire island under siege to a single cockpit, where everything depends on seconds. Number 5. Angels. 1952. The sky looks open, endless, free, but once the engine starts, that illusion disappears. Inside a fighter aircraft, there is no room for hesitation, no space to think beyond the next instruction. And for a new pilot, that reality hits with brutal speed. This film chooses an unusual perspective, not the experienced ace, not the confident leader. Instead, it follows someone learning in real time what air combat actually demands. The training never fully prepares him. The first engagement is disorienting, fast, confusing. The enemy appears and disappears in seconds, and survival becomes a matter of instinct rather than understanding. What makes this portrayal stand out is its honesty about inexperience. Mistakes happen, orders are misunderstood, fear interferes with judgment. And yet the war does not slow down to accommodate that learning curve. It continues at full speed, forcing adaptation or failure. The squadron dynamic adds another layer. These are not distant heroes. They are men sharing the same risk, watching each other take off, not always seeing each other return. Conversations are short, often unfinished, because no one knows who will still be there at the end of the day. Combat itself is not glorified. It is fragmented. Quick bursts of action followed by long stretches of tension. The sky becomes crowded and chaotic, and even when success is achieved, it feels incomplete. Another mission is already waiting. Modern portrayals often simplify air combat into spectacle. This film keeps it grounded in uncertainty. It shows how little control a pilot truly has once the fight begins, and how quickly confidence can turn into vulnerability. As the story settles into its rhythm, something becomes clear. Courage here is not loud. It is quiet, repeated, often unnoticed, and always temporary. From the sky, the perspective shifts again, not to attack, but to rescue, to the dangerous act of reaching those who did not make it back. Number 4. The Sea Shall Not Have Them, 1954. The war does not end when a plane goes down. For some men, that is where it truly begins. Cold water, open sea, no clear direction, no guarantee that anyone even knows where to look. Survival becomes a matter of endurance measured in minutes that feel like hours. This film shifts the focus away from combat and toward recovery. Not the triumphant kind, the desperate kind. Air-sea rescue units are not chasing glory, they are chasing signals. Fragments of information, faint hopes that someone is still alive long enough to be found. Every mission is uncertain from the start. The pacing reflects that uncertainty. Long stretches of searching, silence broken only by engines and wind. Crews scanning endless water that offers no clues. And then sometimes a sighting, a figure, a raft, a chance that might disappear just as quickly as it appeared. The tension does not come from battle, it comes from time slipping away. What makes this story devastating is its attention to those waiting to be rescued, men drifting, injured, exhausted, watching the horizon for something that may never arrive. Their struggle is quiet but relentless. Hope fades not in dramatic moments but gradually as strength weakens and conditions worsen. The rescuers carry their own burden. Every mission asks the same question. Are we too late? And when they are, the outcome is not framed as failure in a dramatic sense. It is something heavier, a recognition that effort does not always lead to success. Modern war films rarely dwell on this part of conflict. They focus on engagement rather than aftermath. This film understands that survival often depends on people who never fire a weapon, and that their work is just as dangerous and far less celebrated. And just when the war seems defined by rescue and survival, the next story pulls everything back into shadow, into secrecy, into a mission where being seen could destroy everything. Number 3, Ill Met by Moonlight, 1957. It begins with a decision that feels almost impossible. Capture a high-ranking enemy officer deep inside occupied territory. Not with overwhelming force, not with spectacle, but with precision, timing, and trust in people who cannot afford to be wrong. Set in Crete, this film moves away from conventional warfare and into the realm of covert operations. The landscape is not just scenery, it is both ally and obstacle. Mountains provide cover, villages offer support, but every step carries risk. One mistake, one unexpected encounter, and the entire operation collapses. The tension is built through movement, quiet, controlled. Every interaction matters. Local resistance fighters are not portrayed as background support. They are essential. Their knowledge, their courage, their willingness to take risks adds depth to the mission. Without them, nothing works. What separates this film from modern interpretations is its restraint. The capture itself is not explosive. It is calculated, almost understated, and that makes it more believable, more grounded. The real danger comes afterward, the escape, moving through hostile territory with a captive who represents both success and liability. The psychological weight increases with every mile. The group must remain hidden, must rely on trust, must adapt to changing conditions without losing control. There are moments where silence becomes the only defense, moments where survival depends on remaining unnoticed rather than overpowering the enemy. This is not a story about domination. It is a story about balance, between risk and caution, between speed and patience, between action and restraint. And that balance is what gives it authenticity. Modern films often turn such missions into spectacle. This one keeps it grounded in reality. And it understands that the most dangerous operations are often the quietest. And from the shadows of occupied territory, the story now shifts to something even more fragile. A crew cut off from everything except the help of strangers. Number 2. One of our aircraft is missing. 1942. It does not begin with triumph, it begins with failure. A bomber is hit, systems collapse. The mission is over before it is complete. And suddenly the war becomes something far more personal. Survival on the ground inside enemy territory. The crew lands in occupied Netherlands, disoriented, separated, unsure who to trust. And that uncertainty drives everything that follows. This is not a story about soldiers dominating a battlefield. It is about men stripped of control trying to navigate a world where every face could be danger or salvation. What makes this film extraordinary is its focus on civilians, ordinary people who choose to help despite the risk. Farmers, workers, families. None of them are soldiers, yet their actions carry consequences just as severe. Every decision to shelter these airmen is a gamble with their own lives. The tension builds through interaction. conversations that must remain careful, movements that must appear normal. The smallest mistake could expose everything. And unlike modern war films, there is no dramatic safety net, no guarantee that help will arrive at the last moment. The airmen themselves are not portrayed as invincible. They rely on others. They adapt. They learn to follow rather than lead. And that shift in perspective is what gives the story its power. War is not just fought by those in uniform, whereas it is endured by everyone caught within it. There is a quiet courage in this film that feels more authentic than any explosive sequence. It shows resistance as something subtle, built through cooperation, through trust, through small acts that accumulate into survival. By the time the story reaches its conclusion, you understand something modern films often overlook. Victory is not always about defeating the enemy. Sometimes it is simply about making it out alive with the help of those who refuse to stand aside. And then comes the final story, one that strips everything back to its most basic form: survival against elements rather than enemies. Number 1. San Demetrio, London, 1943. Fire does not care about strategy. It spreads, it consumes, it leaves behind chaos that no plan can fully contain. When the tanker San Demetrio is attacked, the initial explosion is only the beginning. What follows is something far more relentless. A fight not against an enemy force, but against destruction itself. The crew abandons ship. That is the logical choice. Flames rise, ammunition threatens to ignite. Staying seems impossible, and yet distance reveals a truth that changes everything. The vessel is still afloat, damaged but not gone. And within that realization, a decision forms that defines the entire story. They go back. Not because it is safe, not because it is expected, but because survival demands it. Reboarding a burning ship is not an act of heroism in the traditional sense. It is an act of necessity mixed with courage that feels almost irrational, and that is what makes it powerful. What unfolds is a struggle against environment. Heat, smoke, structural damage. Every step is uncertain. Every action carries risk. The men must navigate through sections that could collapse, must control fires that refuse to be contained, must operate a vessel that barely functions. The film treats this process with remarkable restraint. There are no exaggerated moments of triumph, only effort, continuous, exhausting effort to keep the ship moving, to keep themselves alive. And as time passes, the line between determination and desperation begins to blur. What makes this story stand above modern portrayals is its simplicity. There is no complex battle strategy, no layered political narrative, just men facing a situation that demands everything they have, and giving it without hesitation. By the end, you are left with something rare, a depiction of survival that feels earned. And not because it is dramatic, but because it is real. Because it acknowledges that sometimes the greatest victories are not about defeating an enemy, but about refusing to surrender to circumstance. These films do not ask for applause. They demand reflection. If even one of these stories stayed with you, then the mission is complete. Tell me which one hit the hardest. And if you want more hidden war stories like this, stay with the channel, because the truth is always more powerful than fiction.